Hey, everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Addiction Unlimited. Today marks the final episode in the Unlimited Life Starter series. 10 of the most powerful episodes from the archives to help you rebuild your rhythm, structure, and emotional peace. I created this series because I know how easy it is to feel a little off, to feel stuck in that gray area after quitting drinking. And I wanted you to have a foundation to build from, not just more sobriety, but more direction. And I saved this episode for last for a reason, because this conversation goes deeper than sobriety. It's about transformation, healing the patterns underneath the behavior, whether that's alcohol, perfectionism, or people pleasing. Because what Ian and I talk about here goes beyond labels, beyond addiction, beyond stereotypes, straight into the truth about healing. Whether you are a soccer mom with food issues or a high performer drowning in people pleasing, this is about the patterns we all carry and how the 12 steps can be a blueprint for change, not just for alcoholics, but for humans. If you've ever wondered, do I really belong here? This episode will answer that. Let's get into it. Ian, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. This is going to be a good one.
I'm totally stoked to be here with you, Angela.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited because you are a fellow 12-step person. And I feel like certainly in recent, probably 7 to 10 years, there has been a little more pushback than normal against 12 steps. And it makes me really sad, but I love having another person that speaks that language and really understands it and understands the beauty of that program.
Yeah, I'm all in on the 12 steps as a program for living. And that's really based on my own personal experience, right? Like it's evidence-based in my own life. It's self-authenticating, you might say. And so
Yeah.
I am a 12-step person. I'm totally in favor of supportive things, like therapy and spiritual practice or whatever it may be. But, at my core, I'm a 12-step guy.
Yeah, I appreciate that you said that. I'm the same way. I have an appreciation and a love for all the things. I want you to get help rather than not get help. So whatever that looks like, whatever room you need to sit in, I am fully supportive of. I just want everybody to get help and feel better, right? That's the crux of it all.
Exactly. I'm pretty pragmatic and I'm eclectic, right? Like, the 12 steps may be the heart of my program, but I have a lot of other things that I do to achieve emotional sobriety and spiritual wholeness, which I think is the game,
Yeah.
So I'm open-hearted to whatever it takes to get to where we want to go.
Yeah, good. Me too. So let's just start with let everybody know a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah. So I have a kooky portfolio life and I love it. So principally, I'm an author. I'm the author of 5 books. My most recent, as you know, is The Fix, How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between. I am a Enneagram teacher. I have 2 books on the Enneagram, which is a personality typing system for those who don't know it, and a super helpful tool in achieving emotional sobriety, actually. I am a psychotherapist, a trained psychotherapist. I am a trained spiritual director. I am, surprisingly enough, also an Episcopal priest. I don't actually have a church, but I volunteer. So spirituality is a big part of my life. And a podcaster. I have a podcast called Typology, which is an Enneagram podcast. So I got all to say, like I got a lot of stuff that I do every week.
I know. I'm just laughing as you're going through that because it's just, to me, so typical alcoholic. Like, I only know how to go too far, right? And I'm the same way, like a million certifications and education and just everything, like everything fascinates me. I love to learn, certainly on this journey of, I feel like I've gotten to be two entirely different people in one lifetime.
Yes.
And I don't take that lightly, So as a sober person, I just want to cherish and embrace every second that I've been gifted because it really is a gift, right? I definitely didn't earn it.
Yeah, right. And a friend of mine said the other day, just describing his own tendency to overdo things, right? He said, I always have to play with the toy until I break it.
Yes. Yes.
Why do I always have to play with the toy until I break it? And
Yes, I
I
can
just had to
so
giggle.
relate to that. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about this book. I'm really fascinated to hear about your book, the current one.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's titled The Fix. And the premise of the book is that, all human beings are on the addiction continuum, really. I mean, some of us take it to epic, places. But everyone is looking for a fix for the fundamental dis-ease that comes with just being a human being, and those fixes can take the form of alcohol. They can take the form of drugs. They can take the form of food. They can take the form of workaholism, codependency, people pleasing, whatever we attach ourselves to self-soothe and to find comfort for the distress of being human. And I really feel like, or was thinking to myself, how could I introduce the 12 steps to a broader audience so that they might derive some of the same benefits I have from working a program? So my hope is that if you're sitting in treatment and you're just learning about the 12 steps, you could pick up the fix and it would be just one piece of the puzzle, right? Of learning about the 12 steps. Or you could be a soccer mom who really struggles with being over controlling and or eating or whatever. And you're sitting at the kitchen table and you could read the fix and say, okay, I don't really identify as a stereotypical addict or alcoholic, but man, I think I need these steps.
There are so many people that have so many compulsive behaviors, and it doesn't have to fit in the addiction box. Like I see perfectionism is huge.
Oh,
Of course, codependency, people pleasing, like these are things that you watch the whole world struggle with.
yes. I think to be human is to be addicted, and to be addicted is to stand in need of God's help, as we understand God. And so, I just, we hear all the time in meetings, people say, gosh, I wish everybody had a program. I mean, how many times have we heard people say that, right?
Yes, yes.
Usually in frustration because someone else is acting out, right?
Right.
But usually I think to myself, well, why not then? Why not introduce this to other people? Which isn't to say it robs the program of anything. It actually is to say, wouldn't we want some of the benefits that we've experienced to be shared with others? And so, I mean, that's my daily prayer, man. Is just I sure hope that this will help more people than who know about the 12 steps.
Yeah, right. I always felt that way about Al-Anon. In
Mm.
my first couple of years of sobriety, my sponsor had me go to Al-Anon, and what a magical experience. I feel like the entire world should go to Al-Anon
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
learn about boundaries and relationships. And I would love to know for you, what is I was going to say what is one, but that might be really challenging to narrow it down. What are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned in 12 steps? Not saying that 12 steps is the only place to learn the lessons, right? Because there's also nothing that 12 steps didn't reinvent the wheel either, right? These are a lot of spiritual concepts that come from a lot of different places that make up what we do in 12 steps. But we have our own lingo and language and things like that. And there are lessons I learned in those rooms that were absolutely life changing. And that just happened to be where I was when I learned them. What were some of those for you?
There are so many, I don't even know where to start.
Yes, I can so relate to that.
It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. One was, I think I've learned the difference between reformation and transformation. So I
Tell me
think,
more.
yeah. So reformation is when you try to bring about interior change using the unaided will. So it's like, I'm going to use my willpower to get rid of these character defects. And I'm going to
Right.
use and that's usually just the overinflated ego saying, I'm in charge here,
Yeah.
and of course, you can make some incremental changes maybe, but really it's pretty limited, right? Like
Yeah.
you just, we're, we're, we've created this mess and it's hard to extricate ourselves from the mess. Right. But transformation is when, to use, language of the rooms, when we give our higher power consent to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. So for me, so much of the game of recovery, if I can call it that, is about surrender, relinquishment, copping to the idea that I'm out of ammo, right? And saying, God, as I choose to call my higher power, um, you're going to have to do the lion's share of the work here. I mean, all I can do is cooperate, and
Right.
that alone is a hard task, So
Yeah.
I think the distinction between reformation and transformation, which is, I think, the 12 steps point, right? It's having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, Um, I just sort of daily have to have serial spiritual awakenings. And what I've discovered is the more I give my higher power consent to do for me what I can't do for myself, then transformation begins to happen. Like things just begin to change naturally, organically on their own. And I just get to sit back and go, wow, yay, God.
Right. Was the higher power concept, I mean, it sounds like you have some religious background as well. Was the higher power concept something that was easy for you when you started, or did you have some struggle there?
Both and. So I discovered when I came into the program that I had to unlearn a lot of things that I had
Mm.
learned as a result of training, right? Like I just had to unlearn a lot of stuff. Some people come in and they have to learn from square one, which in some ways is a benefit, right?
Yeah.
But I had to actually do it in two stages. I had to unlearn some things and I had to learn some things. So I had to rinse out some old things that just didn't work, and open my heart to new ideas and new possibilities. In the book, I tell a story about walking on a beach in Cardiff State Beach in California. And I was walking down the beach and I was just sort of praying and meditating. And I said to my higher power, I picked up a rock and I said, higher power, this is my old conception of who you are. And I'm going to have to throw it out. No offense, but I'm going to have to throw this out. Right. And I just threw it out into the water. Right. And then I just picked up another rock and I said, so we're going to begin again. Right. And I put that rock in my pocket and I've held on to it for years, and so I do think that's part of the journey because clearly my old conception of God didn't work. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been in rehab, So we begin again.
Yeah. And I ask because it's something that people question a lot, right? Like certainly in my online forums and groups and things like that, it's a question I get a lot is about the higher power stuff and and people struggling with that, and there is a lot of us have our own trauma around
Yes.
spirituality and religion, right? That's hard to overcome. And I think it keeps a lot of people out of the rooms when it shouldn't necessarily, right? But I get it because I had the same thoughts when it was time for me to get sober. I knew I was going to do 12 steps because it was the only thing available back then, for one. Also, for me, I am intrinsically a lazy human being. So I need the easiest, fastest. Like
Mm.
it's got to be right up the street from my house or I'm not going to go,
Okay.
So it had to be very simple and attainable. I knew I was committed, but I had to lower as many barriers to entry as possible, right? So 12 steps was a thing. It's big, it's everywhere. There were meetings around my house. So I knew I was going to do that, but it was one of the questions that kept popping up in my head is like, ugh, what about this religion piece? And I just reminded myself that I'm a grown up and nobody can force me to do anything. Nobody can force me to go anywhere I don't want to go. And it sounds so remedial, but I really had to have those conversations with myself. Like, Angela, it's okay to walk in those rooms and not believe maybe what other people believe. Like, it's okay. You're still welcome. You're still all right. You can still do the things. You can still get sober. But it definitely was a little bit of a stumbling block.
I actually kind of believe that everybody has a higher power, whether they know it or not. And they
I agree
always
with
have.
that now. Yes, but it took me a lot of years to understand that.
Yes. And as you know, a lot of times in the rooms, people will say, well, listen, you've had a God all along. It was alcohol, or it was Xanax, or it was cocaine, or it was whatever it was, right? And whatever is your ultimate concern in life, ultimate concern, actually will turn out to be your higher power. So if your ultimate concern is work, there's your higher power. If your ultimate concern is food, there's your higher power. It's in control, right? If your ultimate concern is winning the love and approval of other people, even if it means abandoning yourself to get it, well, there's your higher power, other people. So, so for me to sit with someone who's like, I can't believe in God, I said, well, I don't know, dude. I think you've been believing in some God all along. So now we're just going to find the best expression of it, the truest expression of it, because the old one hasn't worked for you.
Right. And it is, you're exactly right. It's like the things that you are making your choices around, that's your higher power.
Yes.
Whatever that is. Oftentimes for people, it's people, other people, right? Whether it's romantic relationships or parents or children or whatever. If all my daily decisions, not all, but a significant amount, if all my daily decisions are made around, oh, but what about that? What about that person? What are they doing? What do they need? What time do I need to be there for them? That's my higher power.
Yes. And so what you're saying, and I love this because I've never thought of it this way, is that all human beings don't have just a higher power. They have multiples of higher powers, right? Yes. Because whatever it is at any given moment that you are organizing your lifetime or identity around, and that might be, I'm organizing my identity around, being CEO of Goldman Sachs, or I organize my identity around, my relationship with this person, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We just kind of ping around, right, to multiples of different higher powers. And I think what the program does is say, listen, can we hone in on this a little bit? Can we actually find a higher power that is worthy and of your allegiance and loyalty and love, and who can ultimately that actually dwarfs all these other kind of silly expressions of higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's really struggling with this, like how to understand or have faith in a higher power if you struggle with the concept of God?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would probably give some of the common wisdom answers that we hear in the rooms, but like one time I had a sponsee who was really struggling with a higher power. And it was actually kind of getting annoying. You know what I mean? Like, because what it felt to me was just resistance, right? Like I was just, it moved from being a genuine concern to like, okay, this is just resistance. And I said, okay, do me a favor. Can you just write a personal ad for your higher power? Just write out a personal. So this is for people who don't remember what personal ads were. It was like you'd go in the newspaper and say, single male looking for single female interested in sports, art, whatever. And
it's your bio on the dating app in current times.
Right. So in modern times, right? Yeah. So I said, I want you to write a personal ad for your higher power. I want you to describe for me what your higher power of choice would look like, right? And so he was like, okay, I want a higher power that is really great at forgiveness, for some is open to, and he just began to write this. And I said, okay, let's run with that. Let's just
Yeah.
run with your description of that higher power as your higher power, right? And let's just see what happens, And over time, as he prayed to, meditated on, did the work, this higher power began to take shape on its own for them. And,
Yeah.
and so for me, it was that honesty, openness, and willingness thing. It's like, let's just be open and willing to the possibility that what your heart desires actually exists.
Yeah.
Because, the human person, by the way, rarely hungers for something that doesn't exist. When you're hungry, food exists. When you want intimacy, sex exists. All right. And so if your heart's desire begins to speak to you and you hunger for that object, right, namely higher power, guess what? I think it exists.
Yeah. I know it took me a long time to really get it, and especially in reading, excuse me, in reading the literature and, turn your will over and remove my shortcomings. And there just were all these things that I really conceptually, I just didn't get how it connected to a higher power. Like it really took me years. And it's frustrating too, I think, in the rooms. Like I remember sitting in there for several months in my beginning and really feeling like I just didn't know what the hell people were talking about, right? Because of the cliches. And when you don't understand them, it is challenging. You feel like there's an inside joke that you're left out of, right? Because somebody will say a one-liner and the whole room erupts in laughter and you're sitting there like, what the F just happened?
Yeah.
So it is challenging to become a part of. And certainly I will say, I was 10 months sober before I got a sponsor. And once I had my sponsor, of course, that was a game changer, right? That changed everything, because then I had somebody having regular conversations with me, explaining the things, just like higher power. But I was 4 years sober before my sponsor broke down the higher power concept to me in a way that it made absolute sense, where I really got it. And I had gone through a breakup, and my sponsor calls me. He's like, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, well, I was thinking about going here, but he might be there. And I could go over here and meet these friends, but he might be there. And my sponsor's like, oh, so he's become your higher power now. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Absolutely not. He goes, well, you're deciding what you're doing in your life, who you're hanging out with, and what places you're going based on this person. That's your higher power. And that was the first time that it really clicked. And I was like, oh, now I understand why they say even the doorknob could be your higher power. But I sat there for years and people would say that stuff. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I have no idea what that means. So it is hard to really get some of these things, and it does take time. And I say all of that to let everyone know it's okay if you don't understand it perfectly. You don't have to understand it perfectly. There is no test. Like, it's all right to figure it out in your own time, but still show up and be a part of the fellowship and take the pieces that are really beautiful.
Yeah, I oftentimes use the mantra with people who say, well, when is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? And I always go, it's going to take a minute.
Yeah.
That's just, I say that with my therapy clients, with my coaching clients, with everybody. It's like, okay, just remember, it's going to take a minute.
Yeah.
And, but that's why we do things one day at a time, because when we take it one day at a time, one day we wake up and we find ourselves walking around a new and foreign country. And we're like, oh, I got here, and it's like, before you know it, but it's going to feel for a while like it's going to take a minute.
Yeah, for sure. What have been some of your greatest challenges in sobriety, and how have you gotten through them with your sobriety intact?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been any number. I'll share a current one with you. I'm realizing now that I have faith, but I'm low on trust. And there's kind of a nuanced difference between the two as I think about it, right? Like, I have faith, right? But that's just giving intellectual assent to the idea that there is a higher power, right? Like, it's like, okay, that's just faith, right? Like, I believe there is a God, right? Okay, well, big deal, right? Anybody could do that. Trust is a whole different animal, right? Like and when you have one without the other, it's, it doesn't really work. And so, I feel like I'm in a season of a second surrender, of saying, you know, I don't just have faith, but I'm choosing to trust you with some things. And I have a number of things in my life that are going on that require trust if I'm going to do them emotionally sober, not anxious, not freaking out, not being a control freak, not jumping in and taking the reins, not, it's like I just have to learn how to rest and trust. And I grew up in a tough home. My dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. He died at 63 from the disease, and he never saw a day of sobriety. It was quite sad. And so you can imagine, trust is not my first language, And so I'm continually going to my higher power and saying, can you help me out with this trust thing? Can you give it to me as a gift? Because I can't manufacture or generate it. Like if I could, I would. And so I spend some time on my knees just saying, I give you permission to give me the gift of trust. Because it's not my nature.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
It's coming. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. It's one of the fun parts of the journey, I think, when you're sober a long time, is there's just so much evolution, and it feels like surrender just becomes a part of life, right? Because you're constantly learning. It's like in the beginning, it's just about not drinking,
right?
And then it's recovery, which is growing up and getting some emotional sobriety and understanding all of that and changing your relationships and how you approach life and do things, right? It's really growing up for a long time. For most of us, that growing up piece takes a long time. And it happens so incrementally. It just takes a long time. And then this whole other world opens up where you start to see your character defects on a deeper level and like where they came from, how they got there, and then you have a whole new set of things to deal with. Like, it is a really fun process and evolution once you get to a place that it feels empowering and not anxiety ridden.
Yes. And when it doesn't feel blaming, shaming, and lacking self-respect, right?
Sure.
Like when I spot character defects, and I want to circle back to that term in a moment, I'm always like, well, of course, this is what humans do.
Right. Yeah.
Like, do not be too hard on yourself. If you're struggling with envy, welcome to the human race. If you struggle with sloth, welcome to the human race. This is just part of the human condition. So don't take it personally. And by the way, don't think you're the worst of all human beings because you have these character defects. Like, don't flatter yourself. There are far worse people than you.
Right. But I love pointing that out too, because I feel like people with addiction get really wrapped up in, oh my gosh, I have this thing and I have these problems. Like, everybody has the problems.
Yes.
Right. We just treated it with a substance or behavior to an unhealthy degree.
Yes.
Everybody has the problems.
Yes.
Everybody's dealing with the stuff.
Everybody's looking for the fix. That's why the title of the book, right? So there's a double entendre, obviously, in the title, right? Like, we had a fix, literally, whether it was, the fix was, heroin or, cocaine or alcohol, whatever. But the real fix, for me, is the 12 steps, right? Like, in spirituality. I sometimes, with character defects, I think of them as two things, right? Yes, character defects, but sometimes I just refer to them as character defenses, because most of the things that we do, most of our not so great behaviors, are really just rooted in the fact that, when I was a kid, this was a strategy that really worked for me, and it kept me safe. It got my needs met. It helped me make sense of a very frightening, overwhelming world. But I've now dragged that character defense into my adulthood, where it no longer serves me and in fact works against my best interests. Right. So if, let's say, a character defect is, I talk badly about people behind their backs because it gives me a heightened sense of self-esteem and self-worth, right? It makes me feel superior. Well, maybe as a little kid, you felt, a real, like, you had a low self-esteem and this did work. It was a temporary fix. You drag that into adulthood, you're going to get fired
Right.
for,
Yeah.
for being a political pariah inside of your company. You know what I'm saying? Now it's no longer working. And it's also, no longer in alignment or consistent with your spiritual values, the way that you want to move through the world, right? Now, that's why they're also very hard to untangle, because they've been with us for so long and we've placed our trust in them for so long that rinsing them out, like I say, is going to take a minute.
And you have so much practice using them.
Yes.
It really is just second nature.
Yeah, it's reflexive.
Yeah. And I think this is a big one to think about also. None of us are doing these things intentionally, right? I feel like people can get wrapped up in some guilt and shame, like they're bad because they're people pleasing or they're bad because they're codependent. It's like, no, listen, we don't do these things on purpose. Like, I can look back on some of my really unhealthy, toxic behaviors. I didn't know in the moment that I was engaging in unhealthy and toxic behaviors. And I was just like, oh, F it, I'm going to do it anyway. That came later. But but I didn't know you're not doing it intentionally. It really is just your wiring. And like you're saying, it's stuff that is really installed in us as children, as coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms, and we carry it into adulthood. Now, what is our responsibility is to understand it better, recognize when behaviors aren't serving us, and do the healing part. That is our responsibility.
Yes. And I think there's an order in which that happens. So in the beginning, we say to ourselves, this is no longer serving me. Stealing money from other people. I used to do that, let's say, because I wanted to cop drugs, right? And then, you start to realize, in early sobriety, that no longer serves my own interests, right? Like I get in trouble. But then I think there's a transition where it's like, and that no longer serves the interests of others, because we're here to be of service to our fellows. Right. And then you realize, it's not only, and I think that's a sign of spiritual and emotional growth. It's like, it's no longer not just serving your interests, but it's not serving the interests of the world you want to help create. And I think that's a lovely transition when I hear people in the program who are speaking in those kinds of terms, I know they've been around for a minute. Yeah. That it's no longer, they're so focused on their own lives, but they're actually now rippling out, like, into seeing it as being like, oh no, how am I being in the world, and is it actually contributing to this becoming a world of love and justice and kindness and goodness and all the things that we would hope it to be.
Yeah, that's huge. I think when you start to recognize how your behaviors affect others, and that becomes your motivation for change. Yeah, that is definitely a level up.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Now, I do want to touch on your Enneagram thing, because we love all things personality.
Yeah.
And, quizzes and tests and types. We love all of those. I'm an Enneagram 8. I love that the Enneagram has been adapted to so many pieces and parts of life and really useful. Tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah. So about 7 years ago, I wrote a book called The Road Back to You. It's sold about 1,250,000 copies. So it's had some, it's had a nice run over those years. But I don't just say that because I want people to be impressed, although I'm sure there's a little piece of me that did say it for that reason. But I say that because it is indicative, or it demonstrates just how interested people are in understanding their inner world. So the Enneagram, for those who don't know, is this personality typing system. It teaches there are 9 basic personality styles in the world, one of which we gravitate toward and adopt in childhood, just as a way to cope, to feel safe, and to protect ourselves, and to navigate the world of relationships, right? And each of those types has a core unconscious motivation that powerfully influences how that type habitually and predictably acts, thinks, and feels in the world, right? And so for you as an 8, the challenger is called, The core unconscious motivation is a need to assert strength and power over others in the environment in order to mask vulnerability and weakness, right? And so you are large in charge human beings. You are typically very assertive, sometimes overly assertive. And once we all know that, like, so on the journey of sobriety, like I've taught this in rehabs, and now there's a number of treatment centers that use it as part of their intake, which I love. Because you learn so much about a person very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And people learn some stuff about themselves very quickly
Mm-hmm.
when they know the Enneagram. It's very handy with sponsees. In part because you get a shared language. It reveals a lot of your character defects out of the gate, right? Like for an 8, like, okay, sometimes I'm controlling and I'm too big. Sometimes my guns go off too fast. Sometimes I speak before I think. So, do you see where I'm going? Like, it's like in fact, in the book, I use the Enneagram when I'm talking about steps 6 and 7, and just say, this is a good place to start when you're like working on character defects, because there is a good long list of challenges that each type has, and assets for that matter. To be clear. So, I love it as a tool. There's a lot of people who get so into the Enneagram, it becomes kind of a quasi religion, and I think that's a little ridiculous. But, as a tool, I think it's super, super helpful.
Yeah. There's another one I love, the color code, the people code. It's really cool. Something that they say that I really appreciate is, you have these certain traits when you're sort of untreated, so to speak, but with some practice and development, right? Sobriety, recovery, emotional sobriety, maturity, you have different traits when you're charactered. And I really appreciate kind of that differentiation, because I can see, even in my 8 stuff, like I can see so much more of that stuff when I was younger, when I was a less healthy human, where I don't have those traits so much. It's still in there for sure and could come out at any moment if I'm not mindful. But once you're charactered, you can really polish the edges of some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it does is it teaches you how to strengthen the inner observer. And, Bill talks about this, right? Yeah. The ability to stand back from your present moment experience and with a non-blaming gaze, observe yourself in real time, moment to moment, and ask yourself the question, all right, so what's coming up right now? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Ooh, look at this feeling coming up. What shall I do with this feeling? And so then you remove from reactive mind, which is, by the way, untreated addicts, man, are so far into reactivity, it's ridiculous. Like they are in the trance of reactivity and the trance. I love what Tara Brach calls it, the trance of unworthiness, right? And they're just stuck there. But with good spiritual practices like meditation, step 11, and things like that, we can develop receptive mind. So we move from a mind that's reactive to a mind that's receptive. And the inner observer is just kind of gently in the background, always watching. And then we're able to spot when a character defense or defect, whichever you want to call it, arises. And then we have space in that space to make a choice. Do I want to continue? Do I really want to rely on this old pattern, or do I want to try something new? Right. And because the journey of recovery, like, this is something slightly tangential, but not really. Like, this should be a joyful journey. Like so often, and that's why the book actually has what I would call sort of my typical Northeastern Irish sense of humor. It's like I think the journey is serious. It's like life or death for some of us. And at the same time, like, it is so filled with joy and light. And yes, struggle's part of it, but it's also a journey towards something so beautiful and so good. And if we don't have some laughter and joy along the way, something's not right with, like we need to, like, that should be a sign that we need to, there's so much laughter in the rooms. I mean, that should tell us something, right? So I hope the book will be one that people read and they go, wow, not only did I get some really practical good stuff out of this, but I smiled a lot as I read this book, because there's a lot of stories and a lot of, my sort of Northeastern snarky humor comes out a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, favorite question.
Great.
What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
I love that. What is my favorite thing about being a sober person? Well, there's some obvious things. One is I'm really glad I'm alive. That's a good start. That's one of my favorite things, about being sober is I'm alive. That's good. But when I say alive, I mean really alive. Like I'm not just, I think I don't want to get too esoteric in my language, but like awake, alive, here. I get to do this thing called life, and I don't have to do it in the trance of old patterns where I'm just on autopilot, moving through the world, banging guardrail to guardrail, making a mess of things. But to be attuned in alignment with my higher power's desires for my life in the world and my role in it. So the idea of being purposeful, of being useful, of feeling like I'm in step with a spirit life, and that the journey of transformation, not reformation, is always available and filled with incredible surprises if you're open to it. I could go on and on and on and on, but that's what I got right now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Absolutely. Ian, thank you again for coming on and doing this with me. Tell everybody again, one more time, the name of the book, and I will link it in the show notes so you guys can get it right from your podcast app. But tell everybody what the name of it is.
Sure. It's the name of the book is The Fix: How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between. If people want to learn more about my podcast or my other work with the Enneagram, they can go to Ian Morgan Cron, IANMORGANCRON.com, and learn about all the stuff that I do there.
And I will link all of that in the show notes. Thank you, Ian.
Great. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. This is the kind of conversation I could have every day. Real truth, real healing, and real tools that apply to every single one of us. Because we all have patterns we're working through. And the beauty of this journey is you don't have to do it perfectly, but you do have to show up. And if you're listening to this in real time, this episode gets released on December 26th, which means Dry January is right around the corner. If you've been thinking about making a change, if you're tired of the back and forth and starting over again, then let this be your moment. I know you're ready for something more, not just another day one, but a new way forward. Jump in the Dry January boot camp with me. We do it every year. It's a ton of fun, and there's so much support in there. addictionunlimited.com/bootcamp, and it's totally free. addictionunlimited.com/bootcamp. When you sign up, it takes 30 seconds. You'll get emails to guide you through every single step of the process. So read the effing emails. Thank you. And if you already know this isn't about just Dry January for you, if you're ready for a real lifestyle shift, real guidance, real results, then it's time to book a call with me, addictionunlimited.com/call. All of those links are in the show notes. This is high-level coaching for people who are done half living, right? This is your time. No more circling, no more confusion, just direction and the support to follow through. So Dry January or book a call with me, whatever is the next right move for you, let's do it together. I love you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.